Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of y'all, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. So I won't make this long because I'm headed for the Friday prayer. This being part 2 of breaking the hyena's chains on our brains. In part 1, when I was talking about mass friend zoning, the ones that tend to be better behaved, don't misunderstand what I mean, because some are like, no, I got to tell you, man, I'm cutting them all loose. No, I wasn't saying to give them anything that they want for free. I wasn't saying to give them anything of benefit for free. I just meant friend zone is in the way that they friend zone you. You know, you don't really gain much, but you're at peace with them. And you can't just go hard in the paint on them because they ain't mean, but there's no benefit to derive from them. Because if it benefits you, they're going to keep it for themselves. That's what I'm talking about. And that's part 1. I'm not saying that there are no good women, but understand that one of the bad things about the good or the well-behaved women in the West is what I mentioned. They were willing to let the other ones lower the standard, forgetting that the end result of these lowered standards was the suffering of real human beings, because these human beings were men. And that leads me to what happened with Helga Babushka. I said to you that staying in the West with them is usually a problem. Now, even if you don't, those marriages break up at a 20% rate. That's too high for my liking, but it's only 20% compared to when they're from the West as well. But what happens, Helga Babushka is living in Canada. The women came for her. Shouts out to those of you that sent me the links. It was 2 of you that did it. So, no, 3 of you that did it. And shout out to Joan J for 2 things. 1, showing us the timeline, how she changed overnight. 2, showing us or confirming what I've been telling you all about how there's this rivalry in between Asians. Asians are not a unified race. I said it. Now Joan J is telling you the same thing. Maybe you'll believe it coming from her. And I don't blame you if you believe her more than you believe me. She's Asian, I'm not. But the other thing that this shows is that what's really going on here is it is beyond race, but I'm not going to ignore the role that race plays in it either. Absolutely not. Making it all and only about race and not climate and melanin content overall, and making it about everything but race, are both extremes I'm not going to go into. You know me, I love the balance. I'll be extreme when the extremity is the right path. That's a rare thing though. But the second part to breaking that chain, second thing you got to do to break that chain, well, you're going to have to train yourselves to not want sisters racially and phenotypically over other races. That's a hard thing to do, because see, what you really have to do is you have to stop wanting Western black women. You don't really have to train yourself to not want wide nose, big lips, 4C hair, dark skin, but what it is that you have to train yourself to not want a certain mindset. But you have to also train yourself to know what that mindset is, so that you can identify them by accent and piercings and tattoos, as opposed to by a purely biological phenotype. You understand where I'm going with this? That's what I wanted y'all to realize. This is the harder part, because you have to train yourself to disprefer your own race of women to a certain extent when you're in one geographical location, and yet be ready to be fair to them when you're in another, if that's where you wind up. So if you're going to the continent, or your job's going to take you to the continent, you know what to do, right? That's what I was trying to get at. That's hard. That is difficult. It's very hard. It's not your fault, but it's very hard. Because, like I said, some men, young men, are learning to not want sisters because they're sisters. They're learning to not want sisters because of attitude, but they're learning, Assalamu alaikum, but they're learning to not want sisters and identifying them based on phenotype. That's problematic. Because as I've stated, the problem is not race. Race is not biologically tied to behaviors, but I also want you to know that you're dealing with Western sisters who believe that you can tie personality traits to phenotypes. Even a lot of well-behaved sisters think this. I've met non-American Jamaican women to think you can look at someone's nose and lips and tell what kind of personality they're going to have. No, the hell you can't. That's pseudoscience. That was the foundation for racism. But unfortunately, it's happening where it's not really just these younger men anymore. Now you got some guys that are middle-aged. I wouldn't say like I'm middle-aged. I consider myself old. But you have guys that are younger, like you have some guys that are in their late 20s and 30s that are beginning to make that psychological leap, whether they mean to or not. And what I mean by that is that they're beginning to not want sisters, but their identification of who they don't want, of whom they don't want, is purely based on biological phenotype, which means that a lot of well-behaved sisters from the continent, from environments that are not misandric, are also being left out. Maybe what they said is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Anyway, you get the idea. This is part 2. Thank you all for listening. As always, black heart, black mind, black out. Assalamu alaikum, a black heterosexual non-select male power, because they don't like it in black patriarchy till extinction of judgment day. Thank you for flying again with me on Jet Black Airways, where jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with me till the wings and the wheels fall off this mother cuss word. Gender, justice, forever.